Hi there. My name is Sherry McInnes, and I'm an author. And I'm sure people are going to wonder why middle-aged white Canadian lady author wants to say a prayer for Rikers Island. But today is December 4th, 2020, and 4 years ago tonight, at around this time, a young woman was murdered in the Bronx in New York. Her name was Alastasia Bryan. Looks like she has a halo on her head, doesn't it, from my ring light. There she is. Alastasia Bryan. She was 25 years old. And she was shot 5 times by an ex-boyfriend while she sat in her car getting ready to go to her night shift at Rikers Island as a guard. Now, I gotta say, look, I love that. I gotta say, does she not look like a guard from Rikers Island? No offense, guards from Rikers Island, but she doesn't look like a guard from Rikers Island. To me, she looks like a pop star, and she has a kind of pureness and a kind of beauty that shines through, and maybe that's her faith that shines through. So my heart goes out tonight to her mother, Ingrid, and to all her family, because I'm sure they are very sad tonight. So, just to make a long story short, I don't want it to sound as glamorous as it seems. Like, hey, I was just in New York for a month last year, and because I'm a writer and I sat in on some murder trials. Mark and I were actually homeless. We were actually evicted, and nobody had taken us on yet because we were at a very tough time in our lives. So I thought, well, if we've got to stay in Airbnbs, if we've got to be homeless, let's go to New York, because I could meet the people at my publisher for Framed, which is out now, by the way. Sorry for such a bad year, guys. It's been a bad year for me too. Let's go to New York. I can meet everybody at the publisher, but even more important than that to me was to go and sit in on some murder trials, because the book I'm working on now, the main character is charged with the murder of his ex-girlfriend, and he stands trial in Brooklyn. So we rented an Airbnb in Williamsburg, and not the shiny part of Williamsburg. It was a scary neighborhood. I remember the first day we were there, we were at the grocery store getting some groceries, and it was right across from the 90th precinct. And there was a detective there, and just totally corny detective in shirt sleeves with the gun holster and everything, buying some lunch. It was pretty. It was an amazing neighborhood, but it was not shiny. Let's put it that way. Anyway, actually, it was a good thing. There were not as many murder trials going on in Brooklyn as I thought there might be. In fact, at the time, at the Kings County Courthouse, there was just this one. The People versus Keon Richmond, which was the name of her boyfriend. And I was kind of reluctant. Was I going to say his name? But I'm going to say it because in a lot of ways, this is about forgiveness too. This prayer for Rikers Island. So it's going to the courthouse. This was the Kings County Supreme Court. It's kind of like going into an airport. I mean, you had to go through security and X-ray everything that you had, and a metal detector, walk through, and the wand and everything like that. But the guards were very, very accommodating when I said I was an author and I just want to sit in on a murder trial. And so this trial had already been going on for a couple of weeks. Murder trials don't go on every day. But this one, so it was already in session. And my husband Mark, and I snuck in and sat at the back, and I started taking notes. And it was not what I expected. It's not as dramatic as it looks on television. and the courtroom itself was quite small, relatively small. It had very, very plain blonde wood walls, kind of an Art Deco "In God We Trust" over the judge's dais. Judge Danny Chun presided over this trial, and it was almost Scandinavian. Anyway, when we went in, the lights were dimmed down, and there was a screen going, and there was a expert witness who was testifying about GPS locations. So there was like a map and all these GPS locations on this big screen. And because this guy was called the GPS killer, because he had stalked Alastasia using GPS for days before he actually shot her. It was over a disagreement over the lease of a car. God. Cheers. And it was actually quite lulling, because it was very, very detailed. Every little GPS hit, every phone call, la la la. And at one time, the defense attorney had to say, one of the jury members was falling asleep, and the judge had to remind everybody to keep their eyes open and watch the proceedings. So it was not what I expected that way, but there was one day that was very difficult to watch. And it was CCTV footage, black and white footage, of a man walking up to a car. It was Alastasia's car, and stopping and turning, and then all of a sudden you just saw 5 bright white flashes. Just bright, like magnesium bright. And there was no sound, there was no audio. Obviously, it was CCTV. But this is when Alastasia was killed. Now, her mother, Ingrid, was obviously there, and there was a huge gasp in the courtroom because it was very difficult to watch. And Alastasia's mother started to cry, and her other family members were trying to comfort her for the rest of the session. It was very disturbing. So we had to come home before everything got settled, and when we got back to Toronto into another Airbnb, where we've got a place to live now, by the way. But I tried to follow the trial, and the sentencing didn't happen until February 2020, and the GPS killer, as he was known, got 40 years to life for second-degree murder. So I didn't realize that Rikers Island is not a maximum security facility for long-term prisoners. It is a jail for pretrial detainees. And as I was writing my book, my main character is charged with murder, and he has to bail is denied because he's already on parole for assault, and so he is remanded into custody at Rikers Island. And I had a lot of trouble getting into the character because there's information about Rikers online. There's their website says what you can and can't wear when you visit somebody, and what you can and can't bring. And there are a lot of articles about controversial things. Rikers Island has a pretty bad reputation, and like visitors sneaking contraband in, or maybe a little hanky-panky going on that shouldn't be happening, and other kinds of issues with the guards, corrections officers. Not going to go there right now. I was still frustrated though, because I still couldn't find the kind of information I needed to really feel what it would be like for my character to spend 6 months in Rikers awaiting trial. So then a few weeks ago, The Undoing started. Great. What a great TV show, right? Nicole Kidman, you're a genius. Anyway, so Hugh Grant's character gets remanded into custody before he makes bail, and he has to go to Rikers. And they did shoot the exteriors of those scenes at Rikers Island, but the interiors were shot somewhere else. And, so again, I was like, really? There are a few shots inside Rikers Island, but you can't really figure out what it is. So, last week, my husband was getting ready for work, and he's a chef now. He used to be a TV vice president, but he was laid off, and now he's a line cook. He's very happy, and he was unemployed for 6 months for the shutdown. He's back at work now. Thank you very much. So I was sitting here, and he's getting ready, and I'm going to settle in to finish watching the end of Homecoming on Prime. And I just want to say a shout out. Thank you, Amazon Studios. They bought the rights to Framed last year, and this time last year, probably almost to the day, the upfront payment came through, and Amazon Studios saved Christmas, and I was able to buy Christmas gifts and pay rent. And Amazon's saving Christmas this time too, because all the stores here in Toronto are closed. You can't shop. Anyway, so I'm sitting here, and I'm going to cuddle in with the Homecoming. And so I say, and we've got one of those remotes where you can talk right into it, and I say, okay, Prime. And instead of taking me to the screen of Prime, where you pick, it's either me or Mark, it takes me to this whole other screen on Netflix, and not even the screen where you choose your name. It's like a whole other screen for a true crime documentary series, and right away it pops out at me, Rikers Island. So I look at it, and it's called Time, the Kalief Browder Story. Ah, there's Kalief. He's got a halo too. So I say to my husband, this is a documentary series about Rikers Island. And usually, I'm a huge fan of true crime, so it's very unusual that Netflix had not already flagged this series for me. And I said, you heard me say Prime, right? And look what it's taken me to this documentary series about Rikers. And he's like, Mark's very sensible. And he's like, well, Time and Prime sound the same, so, because that's what it was called, Time. And I'm like, oh yeah, right. All right. Still a coincidence, though. So I start watching this series, and I don't stop taking notes. I certainly got an uncomfortable idea about what life at Rikers is like. To make a long story short, Kalief was 16 years old when he was pointed out on the street for stealing somebody's backpack, which he never did. And at 16 years old, he went into the adolescent facility of Rikers Island. You hear about people falling through the cracks, right? Well, he fell through about 1 million cracks. And without passing judgment on too many people who were involved in this, poor Kalief was in Rikers Island for 3 years. And he spent a lot of that time in the box, solitary confinement, months and months and months, when even the UN says 2 weeks in solitary confinement is considered torture. So this poor young man, and he was a small guy, 145 pounds, 5'5", but he was tough. And he got in some fights, and there was footage of fights, and there was footage of getting roughed up by guards, and it was not fun to watch. And he refused. He would come, for a new court date, and he would refuse to plead out. He would refuse to plead guilty to stealing this guy's backpack. This guy had already gone to Mexico. He wasn't even around anymore, but he refused to plead guilty. to doing this because he didn't do it. And so he would go back into Rikers. And Van Jones is in the documentary, and he calls him a moral genius. He's got that right. It is produced, the Kalief Browder Story is produced by Jay-Z and Harvey Weinstein. So it was obviously before everything went down. Ironically, Harvey Weinstein spent some time in Rikers before his sentencing. But Jay-Z took a real interest in Kalief. There is Kalief's mother, Vanita, who fought very, very hard. She's got a halo over her too. She fought very, very hard to try and get Kalief out of jail sooner than he was. But like I said, if there was a crack, he fell through it. So finally, 3 years later, the case was dismissed and he was released. And a lot of people came to came to support him, including Jay-Z and Rosie O'Donnell. Here's a picture. Sorry, Rosie, that should be over him. Rosie's still with us. But you want to hear another coincidence? The women's facility at Rikers is nicknamed Rosie's. I forget the full name, but it's nicknamed Rosie's. I don't know if you know that, Rosie. Anyway, I guess freedom is something different from, walls and bars and things like that, because Kalief never got on his feet again. He just, one of the experts in the documentary series said that he spent so much time, he was so young, his brain wasn't completely formed yet, and he spent so much time in solitary that it scrambled his brain, and he could never find happiness in his freedom. And a couple of years after he was released, he committed suicide. He hanged himself at home while his mother was there. He hanged himself with the electrical cord of an outdoor air conditioning unit, and so he was hanging outside from the second floor where nobody could get him. And afterwards, it's funny, his mother saw there was just this one place in the backyard where there was this huge piece of ivy growing down exactly where he died. It was pretty weird. Anyway, Vanita, who had already been in ill health, she adopted all these children. She adopted Kalief and all these other great kids who are in the documentary. She'd already been in ill health, and I guess his death was too much, and she died herself a year and a half later. So I want to say a prayer for everyone at Rikers Island. The inmates, the guards and corrections officers, the counselors, the custodians, the cooks, the administrators, the visitors, everybody. I want to say a prayer for everybody, because this Christmas is going to be a very dark Christmas, and everybody's temper is a little bit thin. Even mine. I usually try to be nice to people, but the other day I slapped a minivan. I slapped a women's minivan. It was just a bad day. I was having a bad day, and I'm getting off the streetcar, and everything's already bad. And this woman, people inch up, when they're supposed to stop. But this woman inched up, and if I hadn't been looking for her, I could have been hit. So when I got off the streetcar, take my mitt in hand, I got all my grocery bags, and I just slammed her back window of her minivan. And it was a good thump. And I could have left it at that. Good Christian girl should have left it at that. But no, I came around the side, and I'm on the sidewalk with all my grocery bags, and I'm like, And this woman went ballistic on me. Like, here's two middle-aged women yelling blue murder at each other. She's like, F this, F that. You can't touch my effing car. You can't hit my effing car. She's giving me the finger. Like, oh my God. We're like just screaming at each other. And finally, I'm like, get out of here. Just get out of here. Right? It was awful. And I hate getting that upset because it gives me vertigo. But anyway, I yelled so hard when I came in, my throat hurt and I had to gargle with salt water. Because that's how much it hurt. So I'm just saying, I know everyone's tempers are a little short this Christmas. And for those of us who are Christians, and 2 out of every 3 inmates in America consider themselves Christian, for those of us who are Christians, let's really remember what Christ's message was, because this is the time of year to do it. This is a holy year for most major religions. And I don't want you to think that, I'm just some haughty white woman who like has everything going for her, because I know, right? That's pretty good. No, I grew up really, really poor. Did I show this to you already? See, that's me when I was 2.5. There's the freaking place where we burned our garbage. Very, very poor. There was domestic violence. There was addiction, divorce, broken homes, lots and lots and lots of bullying. When I was a little girl, 7, 8, 9, there was a gang of boys called the Mafia that would wait around and beat me up every day after school. And I mean, really beat me up. And I was already a Christian. And I believed in turning the other cheek, so I would just drop to my knees and let them kick the hell out of me. But I would wake up in the morning. I would pray at night, and I would pray in the morning that I would not get hurt too badly. And I'm sure everyone at Rikers and elsewhere has to feel the same way. So I used to sleep with this in my pillow back then. Lord's Prayer and a picture of Jesus. It's glass. It was not comfortable, and it could wake me up occasionally. But I wanted to be close to Jesus. Now, I'm a Gnostic Christian, so we can talk more about that another time, but there's not so many thou shalt nots in Gnostic Christianity. But that's not the point. The point is really that this is a time of year for us to remember Christ's message of peace and love and forgiveness. And so forgiveness is important because, for those of you who are incarcerated, God has already forgiven you. And in a lot of cases, even the families of the people you wronged have forgiven you. And the thing that you must do is to try to forgive yourself, because I think if you can do that, then you can live a more peaceful life, and you can make the right decisions when you bump into somebody in jail or whatever, and you want to start some fisticuffs. I think anybody can do anything, and they're closing Rikers by 2026. But I think between now and then, there are a lot of people who either work at Rikers or are there who can change the world. I believe that that's absolutely true. So, before we go on, I want to say another quick RIP to someone, Alex Trebek. Because Alex was born in my hometown of Sudbury, Ontario, a little mining town in Canada. Hey, Sudbury. And he passed recently, of course, last month. And I read something that he said, a quote he said that really resonates, and I think we could all use it, especially this year when there probably won't be a lot of gifts. And he said, the secret to happiness is not getting what you want, of course. It's wanting what you get. So I hope this Christmas that we all want what we get, and we won't worry so much about how many presents are under the tree, and that we will help as many people as we can help, and that we will be kind to each other. Because there's one good thing that we've learned from this freaking virus, and that is literally that we are all connected. It's not, Buddhist philosophy or New Age mumbo jumbo. We are literally all connected by the air that we breathe. And it doesn't matter what country we live in. It doesn't matter what religion we are, what race we are. Of course, the poor people have it worse than the rich people, as usual. But everyone all over the world, their lives have been changed by this tiny little thing we can't even see, but that we breathe in. And it is true. It is absolutely true. For the first time in human history, we know that we are all connected. So let us look after each other during this holy season, not just of Christmas, but of Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and Festivus. And, it's a special time of year, and let's remember what it's really about: peace and love and harmony and being good to one another, okay? So now, let's say the Lord's Prayer. Prayer for Rikers and everybody else. This prayer sounds a little dated to me, but we're going to do it anyway, all right? Ladies, please see how I'm praying here. We're wreaking havoc on our hands, right? I'm 57. My hands are still in pretty good shape. If you go like this all the time, clasp your hands, you're going to make your knuckles all knobbly, and you're going to stretch your skin. And if you're rubbing all that cream, okay? So when we're praying, and we're going to do a lot of praying this season, like this, okay? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on Rikers, as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. All right. For everyone, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa. And if you're not a believer, like my husband, a devout atheist, I wish everybody a peaceful holiday season. All right. Look after each other and yourself.